When he was working for Tom Norman, Joseph had had a wonderful dream. He hoped to save up his earnings, enough so he might one day buy himself a small house where he could live in peace and quiet. Since he had run away from his father and stepmother, and thereafter to live for 2 years with his uncle Charles and Aunt Jane and their family, and then in the Leicester workhouse for 4 long terrible years, Joseph could perhaps hardly remember having a home. It must have seemed such a long and painful while ago, when he had lived with his mother and their little family in Lee Street and later at Burstall Street, even as he might dwell too upon the griefs of his poor mother from losing 2 children, his younger brothers to illness. But at least it had been his home, and he could remember his dear mother, who before she passed away he was so close to. She never shrugged away from him as his condition progressed. She cared for him and encouraged him. For him she had been an angel, who had shown to him a constant gentleness and unfailing love. Joseph wanted a real home again one day. In his work with Sam whose idea it was to make for him the veiled hat and cloak, which in my opinion was made with a kind heart and good intentions, he was taken from place to place in his own caravan to give him privacy, for which he was grateful. With Tom Norman in the little shop in Whitechapel, he was treated with kindness and respect. A clean bed and mattress was bought for him, his own blankets, and a curtain was put up to give him privacy there too while he slept. At first, to Norman's alarm and shock, when he first saw him sleep in his sitting posture. With a wave of compassion at Joseph's discomfort, while he never complained, and with practicality too, Norman had tried to find a way to help Joseph sleep easier. He engaged the help of a Mr. Wintle, a carpenter, and his wife. A basketwork affair was made at something like a yoke, which was strapped to Joseph's shoulders, the inside lined with lamb's wool. It was an ingenious effort, but unfortunately it did not work. However, it was wonderful that Tom Norman thought about Joseph's welfare, as shown by this act of kindness. Joseph was allowed to have for himself alone all the money made from the selling of the pamphlets that were printed especially for his show, those which had Joseph's short autobiography on, and also the representation of Joseph still having the mass of flesh which had once protruded from his face. Joseph was a proud man when it came to earning his own way. Once the pamphlets ran out, and while they waited for a new batch to be printed up, Norman suggested to Joseph if they might work the nobbins mean to pass the hat round. But Joseph wouldn't hear none of that, saying with determination and on principle, "We are not beggars, are we, Thomas?" If Joseph had stayed with Norman, he might well have gained his dream. A little house all of Joseph's own to do with as he pleased and to live in quiet. I can imagine it very well. I can see Joseph pottering around in his little house, or just sitting quietly by the window of his own sitting room reading, and I'm sure just like his room at the hospital, it will be full of shelves of books. There will be pretty pictures on the walls and vases of flowers cut from his own garden. The sunshine through the lace curtain would be cast on him, and perhaps he has the window open just a little, and from outside in the street he hears children playing or birds singing from under the eaves as though to him alone. Beside him would be a cup of tea in an elegant bone china cup and saucer on a small table covered with a lace tablecloth. I would hope he might even have a house in the country, in a little village perhaps, where he might find people to be considerate towards him. He would have a beautiful garden with a high wall around it, so he can tend his plants and flowers happily without anyone to look at him. Joseph had a love of nature. While on his lovely holidays at Fawsley Park, where he was given the run of a cottage to himself, while of course with someone to attend to his needs, he had so enjoyed the countryside. Unhindered by his veiled hat and cloak, he would roam the glades and copses, wander amongst the trees, and observe nature just as he liked, yet without anyone observing him. It must have been wonderful for him, and he actually expressed excitedly all his adventures back to Treves in the letters he wrote while he stayed there. Even about his growing acquaintance with the dog, which he described at first as being fierce and noisy. He would have felt the warm sun of a September afternoon on his lovely face, and the grass beneath his feet. He would have picked wild flowers and pressed them to take back to the hospital to remember those wonderful hours where he could be free and do as he pleased, just like everyone else. I can imagine so clearly the true beauty of Joseph, seeing him standing in a sunlit glade, his brown hair tinted with golden sunlight, glints shining in his beautiful eyes. It must have been wonderful to see him like that, completely as himself. And in his own little garden, so it would have been too. Perhaps he would have had a table and a wicker chair to sit on, at a table in the sun, of course with soft cushions to give him comfort, as he would write his letters or read a book there too, or just to sit in peace and quiet, admiring all the variety of the plants and flowers around him, the perfume of their blooms arising towards him on a warm late summer afternoon. Yet of course Joseph had had another dream, and if only that would have come true. Just as I can only bring his dreams to life, as they should have been through my words and heartfelt wishes, that he could have been happy. Joseph's favourite novels were romances. He was guarded in revealing too much about himself, his feelings to Treves, but one day he had said to his doctor and friend how he wished that perhaps he might be sent to live in an asylum for the blind. Joseph's most constant dream was that he might find a lady who would fall in love with him, and it was with this hope, and Treves suspected it himself, that Joseph had suggested it. I love the words Treves uses to describe Joseph's aspirations as to this most natural of desires. He would have liked to have been a lover, to have walked with the beloved object in the languorous shades of some beautiful garden, and to have poured into her ear all the glowing utterances that he rehearsed in his heart. However, Joseph had not just rehearsed such words in his heart. Using his dressing case as a prop, when he was quite alone in the evenings, he would sometimes act out the debonair man about town. He would prepare himself in his word of make-believe to go out that very evening and hopefully, just as he really wished he could, to talk with some lady of his affections. Before he came to the hospital, he was used to ladies screaming when they saw him and running away. He was used to it happening, but every time it did, it must have hurt him deeply, more than we can ever understand, while it breaks the heart to think of it. Yet he was a wonderful, lovely man, and he did not deserve that. He had beautiful dark brown eyes, truly remarkable in their glance, and a musical voice, as remembered by Mrs. Kendall's own husband. I can imagine a scene as it should have been, that a lady comes towards him from out of the house as he sits in his garden, perhaps to bring out to him something cold to drink, and says his name with love and affection. She asks him if he is comfortable, and perhaps saying that soon they will have their tea together. And Joseph will look up to her with tenderness as she gazes down at his lovely face, because she can see how truly beautiful he is. And he would have this lady to hold his hand and care for him and share everything with him, and that he would never be alone again in his little house.